Hi, I'm Corey Lang, and we are going to be doing a tutorial where I'm going to be doing a normal floor tile, which we will then have this, where you can tile it with no seams, plus with a little extra detail. Then we are going to throw it inside of Max, spawn two fun little teapots, and then we should end up with this right here as our finished product. So without wasting time, let's get started. Okay, to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to open up that a texture file. For the sake of this tutorial, it could be any like tile. Me personally, I'm going to use this one. The first thing I generally do when I make textures is I get a segment that I like. Now, if you go here to the marquee select, left click, and then hold shift down, and it'll make a perfect square. So you can have something like, probably something like, I want to say like this. What you're going to do is you're going to go to image and hit crop. Basically says anything in the square I want to fill the canvas up. All this stuff on the outside will disappear. After that, we're going to go to image, go to image size, and I'm going to say, normally you're not supposed to do this, like scale up a texture because it'll pixelate it, but in this case it's not a gigantic deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click here and you're going to hit layer from background. Let me do that again. Right click and then layer from background. Now the reason why I picked the number 1024 is because when it comes to game engines love 2. They love the power of 2. So they love texture sizes. They're like 512, 256, 1024, 2048, 4096. You know, you can keep going on and on. Plus, it's easier to use this filter that I'm about to show you. If you go to the filter tab, go to other, and then hit the one that says offset. Half of 1024 is 512. So you put in 512, and there you have it. Now right now, the problem is there's seams here. That would be kind of an ordeal. So what you're going to do is go down here, make a new layer, hit S for the clone. I would pick something like a noisier brush, something like this. Now what you're going to do is you're going to zoom in, hold Alt, you notice your cursor changes, left click, and now you notice when you're drawing you see a little arrow. That means it's Photoshop telling you, I'm cloning this right now for you. I'm cloning it to whatever target your main cursor is over. See what's happening? It's cloning whatever I selected. And you alt click right there. Now you want to be careful, like you don't want to be like, oh, I want this grass to be here. And then, okay, look what just happened. We just cloned this brick right here. So I'm just going to get rid of this little particle thing. You're going to right Alt, left click. And you don't have to make it a straight line. I mean, you can make it like kind of like noisy, make it look kind of stone-like. But you notice there's a seam going up here and this way. The reason why I made this layer is because you can turn it on and off. Maybe you might make a mistake when you're trying to tile a texture and you want to get rid of it. You can say, oh, no big deal. You can just hit this icon here and it'll get rid of your old layer. So we just do a little bit of this. And then we'll get rid of this line. So I'm going to click right here. You do that, it'll get rid of this line a little bit. And if you want, you can get rid of like this little piece of grass that's on the rock there. if you're that into detail. Alright, once we get that, then we got this down here. And you notice there's a little line right here. Get rid of that. Alright, go back up here. Go right there. Alright. Get rid of that. Call me OCD when it comes to detail. Alright. Get rid of this. Make the seam a little bit. Oh. I want to make this a little bit thicker. This like spacing here. You know what? If you use the brackets, you can change your brush size. I want to make the little spacing here a little bit thicker. Just a teeny tiny bit thicker. Alright. Let's see. Once we got that, we'll do this. Here's our before and after. That's your new tile texture, is what we had before. So now, what you can do is you can right click, hit duplicate. I like to back up my work. I'll say cloned and I'll say original. And we'll group this by hitting Control G. You can name this whatever you want. I put the letters BU for backup. Then you're going to right click and you're going to merge these. Now if you look at the filter, if you hit Control F, that means repeat the filter. It's nice and it'll tile. There's no seams. Now another trick I'm going to show you is if you make a new layer, hitting this create new layer icon, hit G for a bucket. Now normally it'll be this. If you hit X, or X will flip them, D will reset. Normally this will be the color. Just left click here and pick, or if you look at the RGB here, pick 128. That's like a neutral color. It's like a neutral gray. Now what you're going to do is you're going to turn this off. You'll see what we'll do. Duplicate this. First I want to rename this. I put DIF for diffuse. But anyway, name this. Now hold Control, Shift, and U. They'll desaturate. Now do Control A to select everything. Control C to copy. Go to Channels. And click this. Make a new layer. A new channel. Now don't worry if it turns black. That's normal. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I forgot something. I almost forgot. Minor thing, but go to Filter. We're going to blur this a tiny bit. Otherwise your texture will be really, really noisy. I would say like 1.1. That's for me. I mean, it's going to vary whatever like tile texture you picked. Okay. Now, Control C, Control V. I'm sorry. Here, Control V to paste. Click this, turn alpha off. We'll rename this as bump. And now we will turn this layer on. If you go from channels to layers, we'll turn this back on, this off. I put DET for detail. Yeah, I'll just put detail. Go to filters, render, lighting effects. Now you can pause the video for now if you want to copy down these effects. If you have no idea what kind of settings you want. This is what I have. And normally it'll be set to this. This is what you'll start with. If you go to texture, drop it down, there's that channel we created, bump. It's taking the black and white information and it's making, it's interpreting a height. See, when you make bump maps, when any pixel is black or any part of the picture is black, that means it's gonna go downward. But when it's white, it's gonna recede upward. However, when it's gray, like 128 on RGB, it means nothing happens. It just stays that way. Now, for me, I'm gonna say, let's see what happens with 4. Might be a little too noisy. Now, what you do is once you have your detail, is you can go to the blend mode, drop it down, and you can try different like styles. Usually I like to do overlay. Multiplying tends to darken it, which I don't particularly care for. But overlay is kind of nice because it'll keep the brightness the same. But if you look at this, when you turn it on and off, you see how much detail it's adding. And this is just a diffuse map. Now imagine mixing this with like an actual bump map and a normal map. Once you have this, you can save your file. I created one already. The way I save it is I'll give it a name. So I'll call it tile, and I put underscore 1K. What 1K stands for is, for me, is 1024. This is so I can see how big the file is without having to open it up and then finding out like how big it is, if it's a 512 or 1024 or 2048. You can look at the file and you can say, oh, okay, it's a 1K. This is what I need. Once you do that, save it, and yours will just save. Mine, I'm actually overwriting. So what you do is you save it to I'm going to do like a basic like tiling in 3ds Max, just to like show you. If you use 3ds Max, this is where I save my my images. This is usually my general rule of thumb when I make textures for games. For every 1024 you have equals 128 kilobytes plus minus 10. This is to make sure that your file size isn't like absolutely gigantic. Like you don't have like a texture that's like 20 megabytes, something crazy. And then I'm going to do is go in Max. What I did, I just generally, there's the grid, this is how it would start. I would just make a plane. This is just for the sake of just seeing what the texture looks like. Let's do 7. If you go to your Create tab, hit a plane, do plane. Right click these, because right now you have like 4 segments. Just right click, it'll set to 1. Hit the W key, right click on all these to zero it out completely. And it totally did not do that. Let's see. There you go. Max was just kidding. Anyway, so what you're going to do is hit M. I have mine set up already, but I'm going to start over just to show anyone who uses 3ds Max. I know there's a good number of people that use Maya. Me, I tend to use Max more. It's not wrong, but yeah. If you open up Slate Editor by hitting M, you're going to see this. So what you do is you go up to Standard, and you can just drag one over. I call it MAT, and then Tile, Material. You don't have to call it MAT Tile. That's just something I do. You can drag out Bitmap, and there it is. I saved it in my project folder. Then you're going to right click, hit Show Shaded, just so you can see it right now, because right now if you were to apply it as it is, you just select it, select your object, and hit this. You don't see anything. You don't have to be alarmed, but you just right click and you hit Show Shaded, and I'll show you. It's like a really basic version of it. It's not like the realistic version. And what you can do is you can right click, convert to poly, go up here where you make your geometry, go over here, and just for fun we'll make Mr. Teapot, We'll give him a little brother too. Alright, we'll do that, and then we'll go to the modifier list. So you go from here to here. Normally you would do this. I think Max by default doesn't have this menu. I would just click this, but most of you will probably not have this here. That's something you could do here, and you can make like configure modifier sets. But normally you would go here and you would you would hit UV map. You hit the 1 key for the gizmo, and then you can hit the scale key. You can scale it a little bit. Now, what you can do, first off, let's make a light. So if you go to lights, this will be on photometric. Just drop this down and go to standard. We'll make, let's see. If you go to here in the modifier, we can go to like here and say, we'll say directional for now. We'll put it right there. See what this looks like. Now the texture by itself, there's no bump map or anything on it. However, if we go to M, there's an easy way you can do a bump map. However, although it's the quickest, it's not the most reliable way. You can drag a color correction. Just drag one over. You only need one. Drag this over to this node, double click, and you can take the saturation out instead of saving out a separate map. And what you can do is you drag this, if you double click on here and you take these these 4 lines right here, you can expand it. What you can do is you can take this and drag it to bump. Be careful when you do this, when you make like the material big, because it takes up like graphics processing power. If you have like 50 of these open, your computer is going to be slowing down. And you can up the bump. Yeah, that's a little too noisy. I'll lower it down just a bit. I think 30 wasn't that bad. I'll leave it at 30. However, this is also not a reliable way, because what if let's say you had like if you imagine it for a second, what if you had white grout with black bricks, but you want the bricks to exceed outward? Well, if you desaturated it, your grout would be going outward, because white means that it would bump out, and black means it would recede downward on your surface. Of course, you can invert it, but again, it's not necessarily the most accurate way, but it is the quickest way. And you can drag this to like a specular level. You have your material there. If you just double click on here, you can probably drop the specular level down right here just a little bit. Yeah, my computer's taking a little bit to update. But you have that, and then let's see. There you go. Let's see what happens. We don't want to leave this little guy out. If you hit this up here, it says clone rendered window. if you drag and drop, like a marquee select, you can delete the links. But you notice that it brings out a little bit more detail when this is a completely and utterly flat surface. Generally, games use this a lot. It's to fake detail, or to bring out more detail without having a lot of graphics power, instead of making like an actual 3D model of this surface. I'm sure at some point in the future that may be the case where we can do that, just not now. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I plan on making more of them. Thank you.